A few months ago, my friend Joey invited me to participate in the Tour de Donut, a 58-mile bike race where every donut that you eat deducts 5 minutes from your time. And I just want to say right off the bat, I legitimately went into this thing thinking that I could finish in the top 10, and that's not what happened. So this is a story about failure. It's the story of how, despite trying my best, I somehow managed to finish dead last in the Tour de Donut. I drove to Troy, Ohio, where the race was being held, and confidence was high. The night before the race, I grabbed my customary pre-eating competition burrito, which I was convinced would give me a leg up in the donut eating the next day. I am not a cyclist, so I just stocked up on a bunch of gear that I thought would help me get the job done. Aside from my new supplies, I cannot emphasize enough how little I prepared for this race. I was planning on doing a long ride or two to get the feel of things, but my bike was in the shop getting tuned up until the day before the race. But in my head, I was like, how hard could it be to bike 58 miles? And before anybody goes sprinting to the comments, I now know exactly how wrong I was. I did some quick math and figured out that if I averaged 17 miles per hour, I could finish in about 3.5 hours. The only question on my mind was which sunglasses to go with. I could either go softball coach or European DJ. I decided to go European DJ. I also went with a Michael Jordan jersey. At this point, I guess you could say that I thought of myself as the Michael Jordan of competitions that involve both eating and athleticism. I was so young. So naive. The morning of the race, I made a quick donation to a local porta potty, and then Joey and I made our way over to the starting corral. And there were a ton of people there. I was a little bit surprised that no one else had a hybrid bike like I did, like everybody else had road bikes, because I could have sworn I read somewhere online that this was not a serious race. There were 4 different distances you could choose from, ranging from about 10 miles to 58 miles, and Joey had signed us up for the longest possible race. Joey is also not an experienced cyclist, but he did bike across the entire state of Ohio last year, so he at least knew what he was getting himself into.
How many donuts are we doing today?
You said 20. I'm gonna try at least do a dozen.
Like I mentioned before, each donut that you eat takes 5 minutes off your time. When I did the Krispy Kreme challenge, I finished a dozen donuts in about 6 minutes, and that was in the middle of a race. And since we would get to spread our donuts out over the course of 3 stops with like 10 to 15 miles between each stop, I figured 20 was a relatively realistic goal. As the race was about to start, I tested my hydration pack and quickly realized I did not know how to get water out of it. But it was too late for troubleshooting, so I had an energy gel, and it was time to go. I had looked at past results, and it looked like most people fell into one of 2 categories. The first being people that were good at biking and ate 1 or 2 donuts, and the second was people that were okay at biking and tried to eat a ton of donuts. And they kind of had comparable results. Obviously, I would fall into that second group. So if I kept my goal pace of 17 miles an hour, and if I ate 20 donuts like I wanted to, my final adjusted time would be about 1 hour and 50 minutes, which would be good enough for 3rd place in last year's race. Unfortunately, reality started to set in pretty quickly since we were getting passed non-stop. And according to my watch, we were going way under 17 miles an hour. But for whatever reason, at this point, my confidence was still high. When I was only about 2.5 miles in, I made a joke about being in last place.
Am I in last? Oh, no, there's some people back there.
I guess, to me, that was funny at the time.
All right, I'm about 3 miles in. Legs are already feeling a little tired, so I still need 54 miles left in these legs. I think like 5 more miles, and then I get to eat some donuts.
We cranked through the next several miles, and thankfully, I figured out how the water thingy worked. The route was pretty peaceful. We were biking mostly on rural roads surrounded by cornfields.
This part of the race smells like cow poop. We are getting smoked by actual bikers here, just people passing us left and right on nice road bikes. I'm on a hybrid bike that I bought from Target in 2012. Joey's on a borrowed mountain bike. So I feel like we're doing pretty good, all things considered.
After what seemed like forever, it was time for our first donut stop. And I was about to be in my wheelhouse. This thing was about to switch from an away game to a home game. As I dismounted and laid eyes on the donuts, I realized the latest in a series of flaws in my plan. These donuts were not like Krispy Kreme donuts. These were big, cakey, hexagonal glazed donuts. But I dove right in using the strategy I had learned from the Krispy Kreme challenge, which is 3 donuts at a time smushed together to help with chewing. And while you watch me delete these donuts, I want to take a second to thank Factor, the sponsor of this video. Factor delivers chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. And as the fall gets busy, you can count on Factor for fast, tasty meals that fit your lifestyle. By the way, I finished my first 3 donuts and then went back for another 3.
Okay, 3 more, please. Thank you. Somebody over there's drinking milk. That's crazy.
Smooth sailing so far. What I love about Factor is that, as you can tell from this video, I'm not always the best at preparing. Sometimes by the time I think about dinner, it's already 7 or 8 p.m. And if I'm cooking, I'm still 30 to 45 minutes removed from actually eating. And then I'm gonna have to clean up after. But when I have Factor in the fridge, I know I have something that's gonna be ready in 2 minutes with no cleanup, and I know I'm gonna feel good after. Unlike how I was about to feel after eating these donuts.
How many are you going on this stop?
Probably just 3, maybe another one.
I'm gonna try to get to 10.
Here?
This Factor meal is a Chipotle rubbed pork chop with roasted cabbage and red bell pepper fondue. And I think it might be my favorite Factor meal I've had so far. I finished donuts 4 through 6 and grabbed just 2 more for my next round.
Thank you. I'm on donuts 7 and 8.
How you feeling?
Not very good. How are you feeling?
Not good, but it's my fixing thing.
Factor also has add-ons like breakfast items or these cold-pressed juices they sent me to try. And the menus are updated every week with new options. So if you want to try Factor out, they want to give you 50% off your first box. You can head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code REVIEW50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. That's factor75.com and the code is REVUE50. Alright, I decided to tap out after 8 donuts and hopefully catch up at future donut stops.
I think the smart thing would be for me to not eat anymore right now.
As I was trying to drink some water, it went down the wrong pipe and I had a very dangerous cough. It was just water that came out and hit the lens, I promise. They were offering Gatorade and bananas at the rest stop, and looking back, this was incredibly foolish, but I was not thinking about cramps or electrolytes. All I was thinking about was how I could maximize the number of donuts I could eat.
Okay, nice big downhill right here. Enjoying it.
Despite exhibiting self-control and stopping at 8 donuts, my stomach did not feel phenomenal.
So our donut count is on our bib, on our back, and people keep passing me going, 8 donuts. So I'm either doing something very wrong or very right. We'll see. About 15 miles in, stomach's feeling a little bit better. Legs are pretty tired, but it's starting to hurt. Just hit the 20-mile mark. I'm about 1/3 of the way done. Means I need to repeat this 2 more times. I think the next donut stop's in like 5 miles. I was joking about it earlier, but I think I actually might be in last place.
I was not, in fact, in last place at this point, but that would change soon enough. When I think of Ohio, I think of mostly flat topography, so I was really bummed to find out that there were some significant hills.
This might be the hilliest part of Ohio. I don't know. Hard to say.
According to my watch, by the end of the day, I would cover nearly half a mile in vertical elevation gain. The part of the course leading to the second donut stop was an out and back, so I started to see people who were way ahead of me coming back in the other direction. By the time we got there, Joey was not in a good way.
Stomach or legs?
Oh. Just like body in general.
I went ahead and grabbed 2 more donuts. I thought maybe I could get up to 12 at this stop.
Hi, I'll do 2, please.
Mark 2 for him.
Thank you.
They're always taking pictures of Gary.
And the crowds had definitely thinned out by this point. I tried to walk as I ate to loosen up my legs. Joey tried to eat another donut but couldn't stomach it, so he stuck to water instead. I told him he should go ahead without me since there were still more donuts I was planning on eating. He reluctantly agreed, and little did we know, that would be the last time I would see Joey for nearly 4 hours. I was able to stomach 1 more donut and then decided to hit the road.
Just finished the second donut stop. About 25 miles in. I've eaten 11 donuts, which means 55 minutes have been taken off my time. I was gonna stop at just 2 donuts at that station, but I was like, I don't wanna spend 10 minutes eating 2 donuts. That'd be like if I didn't eat any donuts at all. So even though I wasn't feeling great, I went ahead and grabbed a 3rd to make it worth it. All right, I just crossed the 29-mile mark, which means I'm about halfway through, which is pretty discouraging, if I'm being honest. My stomach is feeling pretty bad. Those post-donut hills are something else. So right now, just trying to go slow enough that I can make sure I don't throw up. Also, totally thought I was gonna be done with this thing in like 3.5 hours. And I'm at the halfway point and I'm almost at 2.5 hours. So might be on this bike for close to, if not more than 5 hours. Holy cow.
Spoiler alert. It was more than 5 hours. Over the next several miles, things began to deteriorate quickly.
Yeah. Whew.
It also didn't help that miles 24 through 36 were almost entirely uphill.
26.5 miles to go. Just a marathon, you know. Just a marathon.
And eventually, I ran into the issue that would plague me for the final 25 miles of the race.
Okay, taking a little walking break because my legs are starting to cramp up in places that I didn't even know I had muscles. Stomach also feels pretty bad. Oh, a couple dangerous burps here and there. Do not like it. This is just so much longer than I ever anticipated it being. All right, I'm back on the bike. I really do think that helped. I feel a lot better. I feel like it's a mental game at this point.
Incredibly ironic that I said that, because I can't tell you how many gym motivation posts I've seen that say something like, the mind fails first, and then the body. But over the course of the next several miles, my body basically decided to commit a mutiny against my mind. Like, my mind wasn't ready to quit, but my body started taking cheap shots. I started getting these cramp attacks.
My legs literally like seized up, like they like locked up. I could not move them, could not even walk. So I just had to like fall over and sit down.
You okay?
Yeah, stretching some cramps.
The only way I know how to describe it is that if you've ever had a Charlie horse while you're asleep, like in your calf, you know that the only thing you can do is writhe in pain and wait for it to pass. It was like that, except instead of being in my calf, it was in every muscle in both legs at the same time. My point is this, even if I was mentally tough, which I'm not, I feel like my body quit first, so I've been misled by fitness influencers. I thought the breaks I was taking would allow me to bike for 5 or so miles at a time, but I was wrong.
It's been about half a mile and I already am starting to cramp up again. What have I done?
At this point, I was starting to doubt whether I'd even be able to finish at all.
Cramps are getting significantly worse and they are coming closer and closer together. It sounds like I'm having a baby. Just cannot see anybody in front of or behind me right now. Very lonely. I feel bad. Some lady just pulled over and asked if I needed a ride. Yikes. I told her no, but that answer might change at some point. All right, I just hit 45 miles, which on the surface, that sounds good. 45 out of 58 miles done, but it's still gonna take me over an hour to do these last 13 miles, so that's demoralizing. Okay, so this guy passed me walking. He's like, doing all right? And I was like, yeah, just working out some cramps. And he's like, do you want some cramp pills? And I was like, what do you mean by cramp pills? And he's like, yeah, you just stick them under your tongue. And I was like, I mean, I'd love to try one. And he's like, well, here, take 4. Don't worry, it's all natural. Just stick them under your tongue, let them dissolve. I just took a few myself. They did not taste good. Left my mouth super dry, but kind of felt like I was being offered some like magic beans or something. So we'll see if it works out for me. Legs are cramping. Oh gosh. Those miracle beans did not work. My legs hurt so bad.
After what seemed like an eternity, I made it to the 3rd donut stop, which was looking pretty sad and deserted.
Any water left?
Yeah, ice water.
Thank you. All right, I think I'm gonna pass on the donut on the stop. Probably could have gotten it down, but I think I'm gonna need all the advantage I can get covering these last 10 miles, and I'm gonna settle for 11 and just try to make it across the finish line. I rode for like 30 seconds and then immediately started to cramp again. This is not good. Just past the 5-hour mark.
Just for perspective here, the marathons that I've run have taken me around 4 hours. What I thought was gonna be a fun little food challenge somehow turned into the longest continuous physical activity I have ever done in my life. And that would be true at this point whether I finished the race or not.
Okay, update. I know I've been kind of joking about it, but I think there is legitimately a follow car behind me, which means that I am literally the last person out on the course right now. There's some ladies that were just sitting out on their lawn to cheer for me, which is so nice of them. Just for perspective, time elapsed is now 5 hours and 25 minutes since the start of the race. So that is very sweet of them to wait for me. Man, I don't know if I'm just beyond exhausted or if I'm feeling proud of myself, but I am getting emotional getting towards the end of this race. 3 miles to go.
But before I could get to the finish line, I had to go over one unusually steep overpass.
Oh gosh, big cramps here. Come on, hold it together.
I had to come to a complete stop at the top of the overpass to wait for the cramps to subside. At this point, the guy in the follow car got out to check on me.
Thank you. My legs are seizing up.
And he was super kind. He stayed with me until I was ready to keep going again.
Take your time, man.
I'm gonna just start walking. I think it'll help with the cramps. It's some of the worst pain I think I've ever experienced. Okay.
I passed another group of people cheering me on with about a half mile to go. I made my final turn and the follow car left me with some celebratory honks. With a quarter mile to go, I pushed through a cramp that was threatening to sideline me one final time. And I rode through a very unceremonious finish line that was being torn down as I crossed.
Right up here?
Right here. Right here, I got you.
The guy who was helping with the teardown handed me a medal, and that was that.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
My final time was 5 hours and 51 minutes, and I finished in 217th place out of 217 participants. The next finisher before me, who got 216th place, finished nearly 40 minutes before I did. I did, however, finish in the top 10 for donuts eaten, and the time adjustment for eating 11 donuts, which was 55 minutes, put me ahead of just 4 people, so I was still in the bottom 5. To say that I was disappointed was an understatement. Like, I feel like I had failed. But to quote Nicolas Cage quoting Thomas Edison after he failed nearly 2,000 times to develop the incandescent light bulb, I didn't fail. I found out 2,000 ways how not to make a light bulb. So a couple weeks later, I decided to give it another shot and complete the Tour de Donut like I knew I could.
All right, it's about 6:30 a.m. I'm gonna try this again. I feel like I'm slightly more prepared this time, maybe just in the fact that I know what to expect, but I did bring some pickles to help with cramps, and I bought a bunch of donuts because I'm recreating the whole thing. No jersey, no funny sunglasses, just me and the bike. Let's do this.
I set out with the goal of avoiding cramps and improving my biking time, hopefully by about an hour. I quickly realized something I hadn't even considered before, which was that biking on trails might be inherently slower than biking on roads. But despite having to open and close gates and bike through cow pastures, no way. I was still optimistic. Remember when I thought the first race smelled like cow poop?
This part of the race smells like cow poop.
So young. So naive. I had all the donuts in my car, so I did a series of out and backs to replicate the donut stops. It was a beautiful day, and I was feeling good. Crushing donuts, refueling with Gatorade and pickles. I was so confident that this was going to be my redemption arc.
Somehow that took even longer. I guess I'm just really bad at biking.
My final time was 6 hours and 12 minutes, a full 20 minutes slower than my time in Ohio. So even though I had 0 cramps and ate 12 donuts, I had a slower overall time. But hey, like I said at the beginning, this is a story about failure. And you know what they say, you win some, you lose most. And even then, it's gonna be okay. I'll see you soon.